Eating seasonally usually means you have to learn to cook and eat different things than you're used to, because our society is just not used to eating truly seasonally. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Hobby Homestead. It has been a while actually since I have filmed anything in my garden. The last 3 videos that I produced and put on this channel all occurred on my computer. They were an interview with an agronomist. We talked about soil testing, and that was a 3-part series. So that's really the last stuff that has appeared on my channel. And I haven't been out in the garden showing you what's going on. If you're new here, my name is Amy, and I'm growing food here for my family of 4 in the suburbs in Ontario, Canada. And I'm in growing zone 6A, used to be 5B, but the zones have recently shifted a little bit here in Canada. So our first frost is usually around the 1st or 2nd week of October. And while we've had a couple of light frosts now, at least 2, maybe 3, nothing in my garden is frozen. It's a little bit mind-blowing. These are tomato plants and they are still producing. They are not frozen yet. Right now, I think it's about 7 degrees Celsius, so it's cool. And most plants are no longer growing. Some plants are showing signs of being ready to give up on life, and that's fine, but they're still hanging on. These are our cherry tomatoes, and they are still going strong. Typically in October, our tomatoes are donezo. They're either already killed off by blight or killed off by frost, or whatever the cause of death, they are gone. Most of my tomatoes, I'll be honest, are gone. Any of my bigger tomatoes, the slicing tomatoes, the paste tomatoes, those ones succumbed to blight, and they were over in the raised bed potager area. Cherry tomatoes just tend to be really tenacious and really vigorous. This one is Barry's Crazy Cherry, and I just can't keep up with harvesting these anymore. I'm getting really tired of having to deal with cherry tomatoes. Isn't that such a good problem to have? While we're talking about tomatoes, I'm going to show you 2 tomato plants over here that I think are really cool. It's always a construction zone here, working on our pergola and outdoor kitchen. These are tomato plants. So I was pruning my tomatoes in the main garden in, I think probably July, and I cut out some suckers that were big suckers, and I just stuck them in a bucket of water until a couple of roots grew at the bottom, and then I shoved them in the ground. I'm using this rough language because it really was that rough. I didn't give them any TLC. I didn't give them any special soil. This is like a rough new garden area that has the worst soil possible. It's like gravel and then wood chip. That's pretty much what this is. And I stuck those 2 suckers in here, and now these tomato plants are massive and healthy. That's the weirdest thing. They're healthy. And they're loaded with big fruit too. Only one has ripened so far. The rest are all green, but if we can keep holding off without frost, I mean, we've had frost. That's the weird thing. And they're alive. Those tomatoes are just blowing my mind right now. I also have a passion flower laying on the ground here. It is on our to-do list to put big posts on either end of this garden because we will be training things like this passion flower up against the wall. This is an American passion flower. It's what they call near native. So it thrives in slightly warmer climates than here, but you know, climate change. It makes it so that we can plant things that need warmer weather. And I highly doubt something like that will become invasive here because we are on the colder side of its range. So anyway, that's our little side of the house garden that was new this year, severely neglected. This is like, you know, the swamp milkweed and brown-eyed Susans and I don't know what else. A bunch of stuff in here that's, you know, a big common milkweed there. Fall sunflower, the Joe Pye weed. They're in their prime in the summer. I don't have enough early spring or fall plants in this garden here along our fence, but I have plans to do a bunch of just basic spring bulbs. I have a bunch of crocus bulbs sitting on my counter. I can stick them in there. And then I'm also collecting some woodland plants that are native to here that bloom in the early spring. So we'll see how things like that do here. But I want to get some more color in the spring and in the fall because it's great in summer and then it just looks dead. These are our 2 new beds from late summer. I think it was August when that one was finished, and then this one was just finished being filled last week, so there's nothing planted in it. Kim made these beds with the metal from our old above ground swimming pool that was here when we moved in. And we filled it with soil that we had laying around. And this one has made a great fall garden. The kale I intended to use as baby kale, but some of it got away from me here. It's almost full-size kale now. The cress went to seed even though I planted it, I think the end of August. It still was too hot for it, it went to seed. There's some baby bok choy here that's doing really well. We've had many meals of this already. And then the spinach has finally started to grow. We had leaf miners in it, and then, you know, it was hot, so it was struggling. It's finally growing. And here are the red-beard scallions. No red on them yet. I'm hoping that comes soon. There's a whole row of them tucked in here. I've been so impressed by the flowers in this garden. This was like a just sprinkle seed wherever it'll fit kind of a thing. I did not intentionally plant anything in any specific spot here. The feverfew I did while it was a volunteer, the feverfew, because we had a plant here a couple years ago and it dropped its seeds. And then when we worked this soil, fixing up this space, the seeds came to the surface and sprouted, and so we have feverfew again. I did shuffle the plants around a little bit just so that we would have a border to the beds. And then they bloomed earlier in the year and I cut them back and they're blooming again. Just amazing. A nice October, second blooming of feverfew. Chamomile's pretty much done here. I have another patch that finished about a month ago. The colors are just like more than I could have hoped for October. Got status and borage for some purples, lots of zinnias. I mean, when you get up close, you see they're kind of gnarly. They're pretty much done, but from a distance, the color is just still so vibrant. Love it. So as we enter into the potager area where we have most of the raised beds, we're in this transition period of the summer things mostly still being alive because we haven't had a freeze cold enough to kill them off. But then also you can tell that the fall garden is starting to thrive. So the Brussels sprouts, this is one of our smaller, more later planted Brussels sprout plants, but these are doing great. They really do thrive in the cold weather. They're nice, tight Brussels. Whereas this one was planted when it was a little warmer out. I think I planted it in May, and they're more open. You see that? Now that can happen just as they get bigger too. This one is our big beast of a Brussels sprout. And some of the more recent ones to form are nice and tight. And then, you know, the older ones are way overripe. Like that. That's like a whole other Brussels sprout plant coming out of where there was a Brussels sprout. But I do not like to eat Brussels sprouts in the heat. Like if the plant is just in the heat, the sprouts are going to be bitter and gross. And I would rather let them go to waste than cook them and eat them, honestly. So I've left this plant, and now of course there's another like 2 feet of stalk that's got baby Brussels growing on it. So we're fine. I'm glad I left that plant. Didn't harvest it prematurely. But this is why I tend to start my Brussels sprout seeds later, like in May, mid to late May. And then I harvest them around Christmas time. You might need some sort of covering to keep them happy, although they are so cold tolerant that, yeah, I've harvested them in the snow before and they've been totally fine. So that's one of our fall beds. And like you can see, there's still beans, bush beans in this bed along that back row, but they're not producing anymore. I'm just leaving the plants there. We also have some carrots, a little row of carrots here. And then in this bed, this was my strawberry bed for the last 3 years. And I decided to rotate my strawberries. We're putting them somewhere else next year. And so I just had this empty space in mid-August. Yeah, I think in mid-August or late August. Anyway, these were plants that I started inside in July. But the cauliflower is finally growing. That one's softball size already. Got a bit of broccoli. This is another Brussels sprout. This one was started in June, which is one of the later plantings I've ever done. And I'm curious to see how well those will continue growing. And then because this was my strawberry bed, of course I have the cage on top, which makes it really annoying to see. But there's a big cauliflower down in there too. And then these are all beets that are ready to come out. And we've got some small tiara cabbages in there. Yeah, you can't even see that. But it's a pain in the butt to lift this lid. So I'm just gonna leave it as it is and you can take my word for it. This has been a really good fall bed and I started things pretty late, but this is ideal weather for them. We are hovering around like 10 to 15 degrees Celsius as our daily highs, and the nights are staying above freezing, but not much above freezing, like 4 or 5 degrees. It's just perfect brassica weather. Even peas. I didn't actually plant peas for fall on purpose, but some seeds fell. And you know, this pea is pretty happy. I wish that I had tried fall peas in earnest in this bed. This is my ginger, which might be dead. I just haven't gotten around to digging it up. Could I be digging it now instead of shooting a video? Yes, but I choose to do this instead. I have the tote on it, just try to keep it alive. There's some random turnips here. Random, I don't know, I wouldn't know what I was thinking. They just were stuck everywhere. This tomato here is a volunteer tomato plant. It's one plant. It's growing out here and it's growing up here. There's some signs of disease on it, some fungal issues, but no blight, I don't think. And I've picked some fruit off of it already and there's still some green fruit on it. Not bad. Here's our cucamelons. I really have thought that these guys were done multiple times now. I've come out and picked them all and thought, that's the last fresh cucamelon of the year. And then the next week it's still pumping them out. So cucamelons are one of those things that take a while to really get started. And if you have a short season, they may not work well for you. But even though they like hot weather, once the plants are established, they'll still produce until a hard freeze kills them. And now we're getting lots of cucamelons again. And we didn't even start getting them until the very end of August. It was a late year this year for many of us. Just cold spring and drought through the summer. Things weren't growing much. And so it was a really late start for the cucamelons. And now we've had an extra at least month than what we normally would have getting harvest off of these. So it's made up for itself. The weather has made up for itself. Pole beans, still getting pole beans at the end of October. I don't know, it's wild. It's wild. We're still getting lots of raspberries. Fall is a great time for raspberries. They produce even after you've had frosts. It takes like really cold weather and all of the leaves to start dropping. Like the trees go dormant and then the raspberries go dormant. But it takes actual dormancy to stop them from producing fruit. They produce for a long time. I'm just gonna look for some mushrooms here. It hasn't been a good mushroom season this fall because up until, ooh, there's some big guys. Some wine caps. I should probably bring those inside now. Up until this last week, we actually have been in a fall drought, which has really sucked. I don't want to be watering my vegetable garden in October. It just feels wrong. But I've got all these fall crops, things like spinach and carrots, and I need them to not die from drought as we head into like prime time for harvesting them. So mushrooms have had a hard time. Normally I would be getting 100 of these wine cap mushrooms. We would be filling our dehydrator, filling our freezers with mushrooms, making all the mushroom soup in the world. But this year it's been 2 or 3 here and there, really not much. I had 2 harvests of elm oyster mushroom. I've had no regular oyster mushrooms. So yeah, just like dry and hot fall has led to not very good mushrooming. However, maybe the tables will turn now. We're in late October and now we've had a few days of rainy weather. If you can stay above freezing, maybe I'll get some more mushrooms. I have been planting some more perennials slowly throughout this garden. As with all of my other perennial gardens and native flower gardens, I'm working on all season interest. So planting things. Right now I'm focusing on planting things for fall. So I added a couple of stiff goldenrod, I think, to this bed. And I added a couple of like smaller asters to my front garden, just trying to make sure that next fall it's going to be a little bit prettier. I need to recover my peppers. So the pepper plants are still covered in peppers. I picked a garbage bag full of ripe peppers before our first frost warning. And there was a frost, but it didn't hit the garden beds. So I did pick everything from here, but there's still a bunch of green fruit on it. There's still baby peppers growing. It is wild. This plastic blew off last night, so a lot of good that did. I don't have spare hoops and I don't want to buy anything else right now. So I'm just draping the plastic over the plants. If you do that and you get a frost that settles on the plastic, that will go through to the plants and then they'll freeze. Their leaves will freeze. So you kind of have to keep airspace between a plastic covering and your plants. However, my concern here is not to save them from the frost. Honestly, I'm kind of done with preserving peppers. So my goal is just to create a little bit of heat in here if the sun comes out, so that it just helps the plant stay functioning long enough to ripen those fruit. I like green peppers. My kids don't love green peppers. They like them when they're sweet. So we're just going to try to get these to ripen, and then we'll bring them in at the last possible minute. Lots of lemon spice jalapenos left on the plant. These guys. Lots of cayennes, those red peppers back in there, I don't know if you can see them. One of my favorite views in the garden all year has been these zinnias with the cherry tomatoes dangling down. And now we've got this volunteer sumac tree behind the chicken run. Total volunteer. It's kind of growing through the fence board, so I'm a little bit worried about it being allowed to stay there. But it grew, I don't know, 10 feet this summer, and now the leaves are turning brilliant red, and I just love this space even more. With the Brussels sprouts, and the zinnias, and the cherry tomatoes, and the sumac. Oh, I love this garden so much still. Sometimes I come out to get ingredients for dinner and I just say, I love you, garden. I love you so much. It's a bit weird, but you know, it's the truth. Here's another one of our fall beds. I mean, all of these gardens have been in production all year. So anything that I'm saying is a fall bed now, that's because of succession planting. So like I said, our big brassica bed for the fall right now, this one was strawberries first, which normally wouldn't succession plant like that, but because I'm rotating where my strawberries are planted, that's now an opportunity for succession planting of something. Sometimes succession planting means that you have to plan really, really far in advance. Things like parsnips here, they need to be sown like early May at the latest. And that means that if I want them to be a fall and winter crop, it's not like I can just wait until something else comes out of the bed to put them in. So that's why I planted things like cucumbers here. They were trellised up to this pole, and there was an open space here at the front where I put a little row of parsnips. I also was able to sow some fall lettuces and spinach underneath my cucumbers when they were still here. Now that the cucumbers are done, got too cold for them and too diseased for them, then all of these leafy greens were already there and were able to just shoot up and grow. And over here we had the garlic, and when the garlic came out, I put in carrots. These carrots were sown July 13th. You can see that? The different varieties, July 13th. And they're beautiful. And you know, I've had trouble with my carrots bolting prematurely lately when I sow them early in the season. The ones that I sow in May, those are the ones that I tend to have issues with them bolting or going to seed. Carrots are biennial. You're supposed to be able to get a whole growing season out of them, and then they go dormant over winter, and then they send up a flower stalk. But I was having issues, I think specifically with the Nantes corliss. I always called that Nantes corliss, and then I heard Charles Dowding pronounce it Nantes, which is probably French, which now I feel like I should have known that because in Canada, French is our second language. But I don't speak it. But anyway, I was having problems with the Nantes corliss mainly. But I think I have some of those in here. Goodness. There's Lunar White, Bolero. There, Nantes corliss. Yeah, none of the Nantes corliss in this sowing went to seed prematurely. So I'm wondering if timing was just really, really good on these carrots. And there's a lot of things like that that you could sow early, but should you? Things like the Brussels sprouts, things like carrots. Technically, they taste better after they get really cold because the plant starts turning its starches into sugars as like a natural antifreeze to get through the winter. And so if you plant them too early, then you're harvesting them in the middle of the hot summer and they're more bitter. They just don't taste as good. If you wait to plant them, then you can use that garden space for something more springy early on, and just wait to get all your carrots in the fall, like the late fall. Of course, you might want to be able to just graze from your garden, in which case you should plant carrots continually. And that's why I do. I plant carrot seeds at least every month in different places, because then when you need a carrot, you can just run out and get it. But they really do grow best this time of year. I find they grow best when they're sown in June or July, and then you harvest them once it gets cool. On the topic of mushrooms, if you are in Canada and you want to get some mushroom spawn, I can recommend a company. It's Grow Mushrooms Canada. I'm not affiliated with them in the sense that like they don't have an affiliate program, but they do send me spawn sometimes so that I can try it out in my garden and show others how it grows. And I do have a coupon code for that I will put in the description below. We've got celeriac here. I've grown celeriac once before, and we didn't really use it much in cooking, but my cooking style has changed since then. Celeriac is celery, but it is bred or selected to put on a big root. So when I pull this out, there will be a big sort of whitish, really gnarly root that'll come out. Technically, I guess you could use these like celery, but they'd be pretty bitter and tough because they're not selected for the stalks for being really edible and tender. I only planted 3 of them because they can get really big and because it's not my kids' favorite food, I don't think. So I just need enough to make some stews out of, maybe some other celeriac dish I'll experiment with. I don't need much of it, but I just love having things in the garden that withstand all the cold. They'll be here into the winter and I can come out and pick fresh produce. Eating seasonally usually means you have to learn to cook and eat different things than you're used to, because our society is just not used to eating truly seasonally. You know, we think, let's get apples in September and pumpkins in October. That's kind of the extent of our like cultural norms of seasonal eating. The dahlias are still blooming because apparently, even though we've had 3 freezes, they're just acclimated. I don't know. I'm gonna have to pull their tubers out soon. So this garden is my daughter's garden. These are our grapes, and the dahlias have completely taken over this space. They've fallen every which way. I had some basic supports in place, but it didn't matter. There's no getting in here anymore. It's just a dahlia sea. And we had some straw flower and our snapdragons in the pot here. Snapdragons are really cold tolerant. So like, you know, these look like this because they're just done blooming, but these ones are still fresh blooms. There's still buds here. Snapdragons will bloom in very cold weather. The carnations were great this year. This little string trellis that I made really did make a difference for the carnations. They stood upright. We might even get another bloom on these, even though it's so cold. It's amazing. But yeah, these dahlias have not disappointed. This was the kind that my grandfather grew. And it's continuing on in the gardens of his children and grandchildren. And then these big guys are sort of a dinner plate dahlia. I got them on clearance one year. Oh, look, some grapes that didn't get eaten by all the birds. There's a few grapes left. I'm gonna take those in for the kids. So what's really wild to me is that it's so late in the season now that even our New England asters are done blooming. And they usually start in September and they finish at the end of October, you know, when the weather really turns cold and things are really freezing. That's normal for them. But everything else in the garden still looks so alive, like our tender annual zinnias, that it's just hard to believe that the asters are already done, that it's already this time of year. Those zinnias they blow my mind. My shame, my volunteer tomato here. I couldn't even get any of the fruit because it was a volunteer. I didn't trellis it. It was just laying on the ground in front of my compost. and I just let them go, which I'm ashamed of, but I did. This one I did put a cage around, but same thing. They got blight really early on. It's a determinate variety called Gold Nugget. I do know that. Yeah, just didn't do well. So now I'm gonna have 1,000,002 baby tomato plants in these areas next year because of all these tomatoes I'm just leaving on the ground. I have a zucchini here I'm trying to save seed from. I have to get it before it freezes, but somehow it's been fine here with the couple of frosts that we have had. Like, it's just wild how resilient everything is. But I want it to really mature, to get really big and hard so that I can save the seeds from that. It's a Dunja variety. And I really wanted more Dunja seed. Oh, this is a broccolini. Yadfa Chinese broccoli, actually. And it is producing seed pods. But just a tip, broccolis, cauliflowers, that kind of thing, they are self-sterile, which means that you can't have just one plant and save its seed. It won't be viable. I don't know if it's 100% of the time, like it's just impossible for it to ever fertilize itself. But yeah, if you want to save seeds from things like broccolis, you need a couple of the same variety, or at least very closely related varieties, so that you can get viable seed. This one just went to seed because I forgot about it and stopped harvesting it because it was on the hill over here. The raspberries are great. We had some disease in the roots that I still haven't been able to identify, so there's a gap here, but it'll fill in the spring. I do have to clean out some more disease in the raspberries still, but they are still producing. The yellow ones are the best. Usually the kids and I come out here and pick them and just shove handfuls in our mouths. Sometimes we bring some in for packing for school lunches, but for the most part, it's such a luxury to be able to shove a handful of raspberries in your mouth, because raspberries are very expensive when you buy them from the store. That is how raspberries are meant to be eaten. They are meant to be just crammed into your face like that. It's like how you eat popcorn. All the other berries though are dormant right now. My sugar maple tree here is actually past its prime already because, again, it is way later in the season than the vegetable garden makes me think. So confusing. But the sugar maple I planted not only so that in future generations there could be a source of sap here and just a great source of shade, but also because the color of the leaves is so pretty. We also planted a black gum tree in our yard, and then the sumac. It's just, we want beautiful color year round. So there's the red osier dogwood right here. That's for winter color. It's got these red stems and it's good in the winter for some visual appeal in the garden. So I do plant for that. I plant trees and I plant shrubs that will give us something pretty to look at in late fall and through the winter. And that's one of the reasons why I planted that sugar maple. Because otherwise we just have these pretty ugly Manitoba maples. Their leaves are sort of yellowy brown, and yeah, they do nothing for the garden aesthetically or really ecologically. They're an invasive species. We have this little garden here too, and you may remember I planted spinach seeds in here. I actually planted them 3 times and nothing came up in this bed. So I'm going to try again in the spring. This is where I want to grow out spinach for seed next year. So it doesn't matter if they don't grow this fall, I'll plant them in the spring. I've never had spinach not germinate in the garden like that in September. So it's a bit weird, but I think it was the drought because I never get over here to water this space. The soil's kind of crappy. It's just a new garden this year, so there's no structure to that soil to hold moisture in. So I think that's what happened. But the beets are fine. Beets are really drought tolerant. The parsnips that I planted in here are doing good. There's a couple mustard greens that have come up, and then there's some baby Swiss chard as well. Yeah, not much in that garden. And also we were hoping to do the cold frame here. I talked a lot about how we were going to do a cold frame, but Kim's too busy. She can't build it for me this year, and I'm not even going to try. I'm also too busy, but that's okay. We have hoops. I can put plastic over it if I want. However, things like beets and, oh man, that kohlrabi's giant. Beets and parsnips and mustard greens, they'll prevail through even a light dusting of snow without plastic on top. So that's it. That's the tour of the raised bed area. The front garden is looking quite like wild and nice from my perspective. It doesn't look like your traditional garden at all because it is a native plant garden. It's a wildlife garden. And so I'm leaving everything, all the stalks of the dead plants. But to me, it looks really nice. It looks lush. It looks like it's coming along. And the plan is to expand it so that our whole front yard is garden. It's just, we have to take things one bite at a time. We've only been here 4 years and this was all a blank slate. So one bite at a time. You know, at this point in the season, I kind of feel bad for how I talked about the garden earlier in the season because, or not the garden, but the weather. I had said that it was a bad garden year and it was off to a really rough start. We had really cold weather in most of June. It was too cold for things. I didn't transplant out things like my peppers until mid-June, and the beans didn't germinate until June. Like it was just, everything was really, really late. But I think it's made up for it now with this fall that we've had. Yes, there was drought. Things don't look as happy to be alive as they could, but they're alive. And in like the raised beds in the vegetable garden, things are thriving still. It's just wild to me that I can come out, I can get anything I want from the garden. Usually I can get tomatoes and beans and cucumbers, but I can't get broccoli and cauliflower or spinach. Or I can get things like fresh sweet spinach and sweet crispy carrots, but there's no more tomatoes to be had. This fall, I can have it all. The fall things are growing alongside the summer things and they are a-okay. It's so weird that this is the end of October. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this little stroll through the fall garden. This is actual fall garden, not like September garden. This is late October. And look at all the food that we've been able to make happen in this Zone 6A Ontario suburban garden. Thanks for watching, and I hope that you'll come and grow with us.